Hello and welcome to Born Complete the Stories. This podcast is all about the stories that shape us, the messy ones, the meaningful ones, and the ones we're still learning from. This is a space for honest conversations about growth, healing, identity, and becoming. A deep reminder that we do not have to have it all figured out. We can simply show up just as we are. My name is Gemma, and I'm so glad you're here. Hi, welcome back. This week, I wanted to talk a lot more about the concept of your story as your power because there is so much depth to it and it goes so much deeper than it seems. But the whole concept not only forms the foundation of my brand, but it is centered around kindness, not only to others, but to oneself in the best and worst times. Everyone has a story, and I know expressing your story is a very, very vulnerable thing because it's like a part of you that only you get to keep and hold, except for the people, obviously, that you shared those experiences with. But I want to open the door to more conversations about different life experiences, different struggles, different journeys of pain to empowerment. Because, as cliche as this might sound, what you are going through, so many people around you may be going through, and you may not even notice. Just because you may be too scared to ask, just because you may be too scared to share. And I have said this before in the first podcast, but I'm obviously born with a bilateral cleft palate, and that has been a whole journey in itself, a beautiful but hard one. And in the beginning, I was like, why would I even talk about that? Like, if people aren't going through the same thing, why would they relate? And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is, struggle is real, pain is real. And the more our society closes off to it, the more isolated people feel, the more alone you become going through that thing, whatever it may be. And I think it's so important that, as hard as it is, people allow themselves to be vulnerable. Like, vulnerability is cool, vulnerability is admirable. Like, yes, it's scary and it's nerve-wracking, but it's only that way because society has made it that way. So to start all of this off, I again wanna I'm working on a special project that basically explains the entirety of it, but I want to touch on a few things that really led me to this place. So a lot of people may not know this, but there's a few stages in a journey of having a cleft palate, and one of those big stages is the 5 year gap, where for 5 years you're essentially not allowed to be around any kid your age. Like, the first 5 years of development, the first 5 years of importance in your life, you're not allowed to be around kids your own age. You're not allowed to do things that other kids your age are doing. Your life looks a lot different, and there's a lot of things that you missed out on, in a sense. So that basically comes from like a risk of infection because the area is so like sensitive and prone to infection and damage and all of that. Basically, to explain that part of it, like, I wasn't allowed to learn how to ride a bicycle. I wasn't allowed to learn like how to do a cartwheel, front roll or roly poly, whatever you call it. I wasn't allowed to learn how to play on the monkey bars. Like, all these different things that sound really stupid and like really small add up. Like, even the fact of not being around kids my own age, like, you would think that doesn't make a difference because you're so little, but you grow up only seeing the way that adults react and behave and the way that adults do things and adult like friendships and relationships. And even from that young age, what it did was, when I finally was allowed to be around kids my own age, and I was allowed to experience things that other kids were experiencing, I had a different way of seeing life. And that could have looked really small, like from an outside perspective, but more so in like my teen years did it really get to me and really affect me. Because, if there was an argument between a friend, I expected it to be dealt with the way that an adult relationship would, or friendship would. Like, you basically sit down and you talk about it and you work through it. There wasn't this whole like dramatic, like, oh, she did this to me, so I'm not her friend anymore. That kind of thing. Or um, even just like my thought processes. I'm not saying I was ahead of everyone. I just thought differently and I saw things differently. So even like, at times the way that some kids would act might have felt more, I didn't realize it at the time, but it felt more immature. I just didn't understand the way that people my age thought and did things. And it felt like I was never really fitting in. Like I was either too young to be in an adult conversation, but felt too old to be in a conversation with someone my own age. I know that's a really bad example, and I don't mean it literally, but if you can grasp what I mean, it was just I was too young for the adults and felt too old for people my age. And that makes a person feel really, really isolated. It kind of made me a really big people pleaser because obviously when you do things differently and you think differently, you automatically feel like, okay, well, because friendships are more difficult, especially at a younger age. Um, and I remember going to therapy for it, and my therapist basically said, well, if you're looking for like real, true, genuine, mature friendship, you're gonna wait till you're out of school, basically, or like gearing towards, when I say out of school, I was in primary school at that time, so more like high school vibes. You're gonna have to wait till you're older, and that's when everything will unfold. And that was just really hard for me because I wanted to feel like I fit in then and there. So I started just completely having no respect for any boundaries. I allowed myself to be taken advantage of and used in many different occasions. And I allowed people to walk all over me and say whatever they want because I was like, fitting in feels more important than being alone and standing my ground. Like, I just wanted to do anything to be worthy of friendship and worthy of relationships and all of that. And it really affected me, like growing up, obviously, to an age where I could fully grasp and understand what was going on. And I, I can't even pinpoint where the transition changed, but um, I just remember, like, it's been one hell of a journey to learn to stand up for myself, be confident, believe in myself, not let self doubt take over. Because obviously, that goes into other different things. If you have a negative self worth, you don't really like look after yourself very well. You don't do a lot of self care. You don't like treat your body right in a sense. Like, you don't eat well, you don't exercise a lot, like that kind of thing. And I fell into like a huge slump for a very long time. um and it led to a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety. And obviously it's obviously a fraction of the reason why I went through a lot of different things, but it definitely taught me at a very young age that pain is real, and it made me feel really isolated. And I went through different periods of time where it fluctuated. Like, I remember 16, 17, I went through a time where I was feeling so confident. Like, nothing anyone could tell me would put me down. Nothing anyone could tell me about my body would, or like body shame me or anything like that would put me down. Like, your girl was confident. She believed in herself completely. But then she went through another phase right after that where she felt like I fell straight into that again, and words impacted me more than they used to, and things sat with me more, and I took on more, and I started overthinking more, and I stepped back into people pleasing behavior. And when people don't speak about it enough, when you become a people pleaser, or you basically just excuse every boundary you've had, you lose yourself in that entirely, because you're willing to basically become any version of yourself that you think will be accepted, and you forget about what means the most to you, what holds value in your life. Like, you struggle to make decisions, you question every little thing. Like life just becomes so much more complicated than it really needs to be. And I will say, if it wasn't for my incredible friends and that I have now, and my incredible support system, who basically forced me out of being a people pleaser. Like, in there was one of my best friends who was very direct with me, and I absolutely love her. But she was like, "Stop being a people pleaser. Just tell me what you want to do, or stop being a people pleaser. Like, stop overthinking it. Just, you know your worth. Stand your ground. Move on." Actually, there were two best friends of mine that did that very strongly, and I love them so much, and they don't even know the impact they had on my life. But if it wasn't for the support system and friendship and relationship I have now, like, yes, I did put in the work to get to a more confident, more secure place in myself through life lessons. But the people you surround yourself with definitely play a huge part in where you're at mentally and how you see yourself. Um, so I don't rely on them in a codependent way, but they definitely added to what I was building for myself. And that, I feel like this is all over the place, but it's very real, very authentic. But that decision that I made to fight for myself again and get to learn about myself again, I feel like there's a huge expectation that, like, you go through a lot of trial and error, and then you eventually get to an end point where you know who you are, you know what you want, like everything is figured out. But life is so non-linear. Like, the amount of times I've had to restart all over again and learn about myself all over again, like, that is the human experience. And if you don't learn to fall in love with the process, you are never going to find genuine contentment within yourself. You just almost have to ground yourself in the security of knowing that you have been the one in your life to stick through every single version of yourself, and you've gotten yourself out of the worst and through the best days, and you will continue to do so. It's like a trust that you build within yourself with time, and that only comes with trusting yourself to make the right decisions, even if they're hard decisions, trusting yourself to know what serves you and what doesn't, and believing in yourself and knowing that at the end of the day, everything is going to be just fine and everything is going to work out as it's meant to, because whatever is meant for you will never pass you by. And basically, getting back to the decision that I made, honestly, from my experience, you just get to a point where, like, you're so tired of that life. Like, people call it depression, and I get that, I respect that. And even from time to time, I feel like it is that. But I view depression as this need for deep rest and change of your current reality and the current way of seeing things and doing things. And you're basically not content with the life you're currently living and the person you're currently showing up as. And that's basically the point where I got to eventually, was just being so fed up with the way that I was living and the choices I was making and the person I was showing up as. And I was like, you know what? No one's coming to save me but me. And it sounds cliche. A lot of the things that I say might sound cliche, but it's stuff that actually sticks and actually works when you go through the life experiences. And honestly, I just had to decide if I was worth it or not. Like, that's what it comes down to. You have to decide whether you love yourself enough. For that, it was a very gradual process of deciding what I truly valued and truly looked for in friends, in a partner, in my life and my career, and how hard I was willing to work to be the best version of myself. And also, a very important lesson, how much I was willing to forgive myself, not only for the past, but for things I only did my best at the time. Like, forgiving yourself for the mistakes you've made, maybe for the version of yourself that you weren't proud of, even if it was yesterday, even if it was in a certain moment, allowing yourself to be human and holding space for that and saying, you know what, I did my best with what I knew and felt at the time, and then that may not be what I choose, how I choose to show up, but I'm going to give myself grace and allow myself to learn and just get better. And that was a big part of like me getting to the place I'm in now. There is a lot of things that shape a person's story, and there's a lot of layers to every story. And I love hearing about others speaking about it, because when you listen to what people went through, how they dealt with it, how they learned from it, where they at, your problems feel smaller. And I mean that in a positive way. When you allow yourself to acknowledge that somehow, some way, everyone is going through a struggle that you may not relate to, but everyone is going through struggle, and everyone's come from somewhere, and everyone deals with things differently and sees things differently. You hold so much more space for people, not only people, but yourself as well. And what I've told you now is just one aspect of my journey that has definitely played a role in like how I am on a day-to-day basis, how I deal with things, and where and the places I had to get to move forward and to grow. But I don't want to only sit here sharing about my story. I also want to encourage others to put themselves out there and speak from that place as well. Because when fear overcomes having that conversation and being vulnerable, the world gets a lot smaller and people become more temperamental and a lot quicker to judge. Because at the end of the day, it is a deep unhappiness. It becomes a deep unhappiness, inner unhappiness, that if not spoken about, if the conversation isn't open to, if not normalized and acknowledged, that they hold in deeply and internalize, and that shapes who that person is, and it shapes what they project to others, energy wise, words wise, just how they act. And the world becomes a harder place to be in when we don't learn to open that conversation and allow people to talk about things they're really going through and really struggling with. It consumes them. And I speak from personal experience. There was a time where I never opened up to anybody, and I just thought it was easier, because you get those thoughts of like, you don't want to be a burden, you don't want to, maybe their problem is worse, like you don't want to like step on any toes, that kind of thing. But I just became a very angry person, and I started dealing with things in a way that I'm not proud of. And I I'm just proud of the point that I've gotten to now, but that has only been from opening that conversation. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go tell the whole world your trauma, but even opening the conversation with yourself and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and sitting with those thoughts instead of like internalizing them, just being able to express yourself in whatever way you need to. Hurt people hurt people. And that's what I mean when I say the world becomes smaller, is you never showing up fully as you are. So people never get the real version of you. You create more unhappiness for yourself because you're not showing up authentically and honestly, and you're not setting that boundary for yourself. You then internalizing the hurt even more, and you're building up anger, even subconsciously, even without knowing. And then with the people that care about you the most, you're lashing out and you're projecting hurt onto people who never wounded you. And that's how it repeats. The whole cycle goes. So those people then get hurt by it and they internalize it, and etc., etc. And the world becomes harsher and smaller. And so if we can just learn to not be ashamed of our stories and experiences and open the conversation, we can then not only be able to relate to others and help others feel less alone, but it's also an encouragement of empowerment and saying you don't have to live in this space your whole life. You don't have to let the struggle define you. You can move to a place that feels empowered and secure and kind and safe and everything that you deserve in life. You can get to that place if you care enough about it and you're willing to do the hard work and you're willing to put the effort in to take care of yourself and show up for yourself in the way you need to be. And so by changing your world, you change the world around you. Being able to identify the struggle, open the conversation to it so that you do not internalize it as much, and find empowerment in owning your story in that way, and move to a more inspired, empowered place and encourage other people. It's basically like a type of investment you make in yourself. And I find that really cool because it's really cool to be brave and it's really cool to show up as you are and own your story. And you'll find very quickly that the more open you are to conversations like that and the more you actually speak about it, the more you believe it and it internalizes in your belief system. And I will be open and vulnerable by saying I still struggle with a lot of advice that I give. And I know I'm probably not the only one, but the more I confidently speak about it, the more I drill it into my brain, and the more it becomes part of my identity and who I am, and the more I can show up as that confident person, and the more I grow and I become. So I hope that this makes sense, and I hope this was just your daily reminder that your story matters. Your story is literally your power. No matter what, you will get through it. And I believe in you. If this episode resonated with you, send it to someone who might need it too. Always remember, your story matters. It was never meant to shrink, and no matter how different your circumstances are, no matter the struggle you have faced or are currently facing, you are and have always been born complete. Until next time, keep growing, keep becoming, and I'll see you in the next episode.